Hi everyone, this is the second video in our series on the new fire and rehire provisions under the Employment Rights Act coming into force, this element in January 2027. The first video focused on a general overview of the regulations, and we made clear that there is now a consultation which was published on the 4th of February, which will consider two aspects of potential restricted variations and what the government may do ultimately in the final version of the legislation. So the first thing we're going to focus on in this video is benefits or payments in kind. So this is not cash payments under the contract, such as pay or bonuses. We're talking about things like travel, subsistence, accommodation, private health insurance, potentially a company car benefit as well. Now, the aim of the consultation is to try and ensure that there is a balance that's struck between the protection for employees against significant detrimental changes, but weighing that up against the legitimate need for businesses to adapt to changing circumstances. So if we made the legislation so inflexible that employers couldn't effectively run the business and make changes to the contract when needed, the legislation is likely to be criticised extensively and may be subject to change in the future. So the government is accepting of the fact that expenses, benefits and payments in kind need to be precisely defined if they are going to amount to a restricted variation. Employment expenses are defined as costs incurred by an employee in connection with the carrying out of their duties of employment. Typically, these expenses are quite clear, fuel expenses, accommodation, travel. If they are genuinely incurred by the employee, I don't think there's going to be very much flexibility in terms of how an employer can try and remove or amend those expenses and not fall foul of the new provisions. The more controversial issue is benefits or payments in kind. So there are certain benefits which may make up a significant aspect of an employee's remuneration. The example given is long-term accommodation. So that is fairly rare, but it may occur, for example, where somebody is the steward of a working men's club or lives in a particular premises that they also work in. But the government takes the view that employers should have flexibility to make reasonable operational changes. It may, for example, in the case of accommodation, be the case that there is genuinely no need to offer that as a benefit because of changing circumstances of the business or external factors such as rising costs or the end of a lease. Similarly, the provision of share schemes, share allocation, share options or incentives may lose their purpose over time. Often these incentives are introduced at the start of employment or at a particular event in the business's life cycle to try and encourage loyalty, and that purpose may change over time, and the government accepts that there may therefore be a need to look at removing or amending those benefits. So there are two options which the government has proposed in its consultation. Option one, all expenses and benefits or payments in kind are excluded from the restricted variation definition, which would mean that an employer could dismiss and offer re-engagement in the event that the employee refused to agree to any changes in benefits in kind. Although I should stress that there is still the ordinary unfair dismissal test, so the employer would have to have a genuine business need and follow a fair procedure. Option two is to essentially carve out that definition, so certain benefits or payments in kind could still be a restricted variation, such as travel expenses and accommodation. There would be a relatively high bar for inclusion and a suggestion that benefit would have to make up a significant proportion of the employee's remuneration. That could create some flexibility for employers, but still safeguard the employee's rights, which has always been the intention here. The government has actually said, subject to consultation, that they are minded to go with option one, which would provide greater flexibility for employers. Now, in the final video in the series, we're going to move on to the thorny issue of shift patterns, again, balancing that need for flexibility against the need to protect the employee as far as possible. So hopefully you stick with us for that, and thanks for watching.